So joining us now from our bureau in New York is US Correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease, who is closely monitoring developments in Washington. So Sherwin, Mitch McConnell speaking earlier on, and as we just played the reactions there from the politicians on both sides, the argument of the proposal he's put down on the table. What is really at the heart of it and the vote itself?
Well, this is called the Organizing Resolution, Sepi. So it was introduced by Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader of the Senate, late last night. And we just a short time actually heard from McConnell himself. Of course, we had reaction from the Democratic Party earlier. McConnell, of course, speaking, introducing this resolution on the Senate floor ahead of the commencement of the president's impeachment trial. The rules essentially that are going to be set for how this process will unfold in the days and weeks ahead. McConnell saying that, calling on members of both parties to put fairness and even-handedness ahead of the partisan passions of the day. He laid out the process. He says that House managers, essentially the prosecutorial team from the House, will have 24 hours to present their evidence over 2 days, followed by the President's Defense Counsel and the various lawmakers that will speak in his defense. That will be followed by a process where senators will be able to pose questions. Remember, senators in this process, all 100 of them, Tsepiso, are acting as jurors. They are not allowed to speak on the Senate floor. They have to channel their questions in writing through the Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, who will preside over this trial. And then McConnell points to the second phase of this trial, where senators will be allowed to introduce new motions, potentially calling on witnesses, calling for documents. Of course, Democrats are now fighting. They are going to be introducing amendments on the floor of the Senate as I'm speaking to you now, because they want the evidentiary documents from the House impeachment trial to be made available to the Senate from the get-go. What Republicans are seeking to do in this organizing resolution is delay those votes to a later phase in the trial after opening arguments, where they might have the option to introduce motions that could call new witnesses and subpoena documents from the White House. This appears to be the sticking point. But to McConnell's credit, he has counted his votes, he has counted his caucus, he has the votes to block any Democratic amendments. So we'll see a bit of grandstanding on the Senate floor before the impeachment trial actually gets underway. But McConnell has the votes. Remember, this is the president's party running this Senate impeachment trial. The president has over 90% popularity within that party. So it's going to be difficult for Republicans in the Senate to break with him completely.
So let's look at what is really of concern to the Democrats there, showing that the rules resolution could provide for the option for Republicans to dismiss the trial outright. So they're suggesting that this will result in a rigged trial. Am I correct?
Absolutely right. This is why Democrats are using sort of pointed language to pieces such as cover-up and national disgrace. The very notion that the Republicans would have the option right from the get-go, before even opening arguments are heard, or at any other point within the trial, to dismiss the charges outright is a bridge too far. We don't think that Republicans, particularly when we look at some of the moderate senators that are up for election later this year, we think of states like Colorado that are purple states. What we mean by purple is they can either go blue or they can go red. In Maine and in other states, about 4 Republicans have the eyes of this nation on them in terms of whether they will break from the Republican majority and side with Democrats. They've indicated that they would not vote to dismiss from the outright. So Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell would not perhaps have the necessary votes for that even to happen, Sipiso.
So let's look at the trial itself, Sherwin. So it will be presided over by the Chief Justice of the United States, with 100 senators acting as jurors who are not allowed to speak. But how different is this from the natural order of things in the Senate?
Well, these are politicians, first and foremost, Piso, and politicians not being able to speak. Good heavens, I mean, who would have signed up for that if you enter that sort of arena? Essentially, they are acting as jurors. They're not allowed to speak. And in terms of the impeachment proclamation, they take an oath that threatens them with the possibility of jail time if they were to break that precedent. So they have to funnel their questions, their motions, their objections through the Chief Justice, John Roberts. So this will be a very different arena, essentially for the first time, well, not necessarily the first time in history, but it is an uncommon spectacle to see 100 senators seated in the Senate when there is a process unfolding there. Senators generally come onto the floor, they'll make a statement, they'll leave, they come in and make their vote, aye or nay, and off they go. Here they have to be seated for the duration of this process. If they're going to be 12-hour days, they all have to be there, but they're not allowed to speak. They can only channel their questions through the Chief Justice, as I pointed out earlier.
So, Sherwin, much has been made about the balance of power, the fact that the Republicans have majority in Senate, and that 2/3 is required to convict. Now, is there even a slither of hope for the Democrats?
Democrats certainly believe so, and they are championing the senators to uphold the oath that they took, Tsepiso, to render impartial justice. Let's listen to Adam Schiff, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee that ran this impeachment inquiry, and he will also be the lead manager from the House that will be making the case in the Senate on behalf of those two articles of impeachment.
If the Senate and the Senate leadership will not allow the House to present its case, will not allow the calling of witnesses or presentation of documents, if Senator McConnell makes this the first impeachment trial in history without witnesses or documents, it will not prove the president innocent. It will merely prove the Senate guilty of working with the president to obstruct the truth from coming out. And so I do think that by structuring the trial this way, it furthers our case that what's going on here really is a cover-up of evidence to the American people.
So essentially, the case being made there, pressure on some of those moderate Republicans to be seen to be rendering impartial justice. You correctly point out that there's a very high bar, Tsepiso. 67 senators, a number would have to break with their Republican Party. And given this president's popularity within that Republican Party in an election year, that seems unlikely. But senators still want to leave this process looking like they rose above the partisan politics of the day and rendered impartial justice. They've all taken an oath to do that. Let's see how it plays out.
Thanks a lot, Sherwin. And of course, we'll receive regular updates from Sherwin Bryce-Pease, our correspondent there in the United States.